Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi and welcome to the ISO Show, and welcome back to the 6th episode in our 7-episode series on how to become carbon neutral, using the unique methodology, which is Carbonology, based on 2 leading ISO standards in the carbon landscape, which is ISO 14064 on carbon verification and PAS 2060 on carbon neutrality. Now, one of the topics that we get asked about a lot is about offsetting. So this is where David Algar, our Carbonologist, is going to be sharing insights into offsetting. So welcome back, David.
Thanks, Mel. I think this might be my 10th episode now, actually.
Oh, right. Okay, milestone. Cool. It's a really hot topic. It's such an interesting subject, isn't it, where we're at right now with the carbon landscape, because, people aren't talking about COVID, they're talking about the climate change and, the emergency that we're all facing at the moment. So, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy diary to talk about the work that you're doing and to, share insights, knowledge, and also to provide some free downloads and things like that, which we'll come on to later on. But we're on episode 6 then on offsetting. So the previous episode we covered defining your carbon footprint, quantifying it, so it's a number crunching, so you know exactly what your carbon footprint is, making a commitment to carbon neutrality and carbon reductions, and obviously implementing those carbon reductions through your carbon reduction plan, and how you can communicate it and monitor it. That was all in episode number 4. Then in the last episode it was requantification, which is a stage that you go through just before you go down the route of offsetting. Now, offsetting is a really controversial subject as well, because obviously we've got some credible offsetting organisations out there and those that haven't got a fantastic reputation and, brings into question offsetting in some cases, sadly. So some organisations may want to go down the offsetting route and some may not. That's absolutely fine. The decision is yours to take as an organisation. You need to weigh up the pros and cons. For those organisations that are looking at verification against PAS 2060, which is the carbon neutrality standard, obviously this is the next stage, after you've done your quantification and requantification. And it is an area that we get asked a lot of questions about. So without further ado, David, could you take us through what you know about offsetting in relation to PAS 2060?
Yes, so this is the point where you'll very soon be able to say you are actually carbon neutral in alignment with PAS 2060. By now you'll know your emissions and you'll be ready to purchase those offsets to actually enable you to make that, what we call the formal declaration of achievement of carbon neutrality. But like you said, before you do jump into a rabbit hole of sketchy providers and dodgy websites, you do need to know the requirements that PAS 2060 lays out for an offset provider.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of PAS 2060, we know that there's a lot of talk about offsetting, but for complete novice that doesn't know what offsetting actually is, could you break that down for us and just explain how it actually works, please?
Yes, so you essentially purchase what they call carbon credits or carbon offset credits for each tonne of CO2 equivalent you've produced. So generally the rule of thumb is 1 credit equals 1 tonne offset. So this basically means there'll be no net increase in global emissions as a result of your activities because you found an equilibrium between the emissions you put into the atmosphere and those you've taken out. So again, general rule of thumb, 1 credit is 1 tonne offset. So what that actually means in practice is purchasing an offset means you're making a financial contribution to a project, mainly in developing areas of the world, that either removes emissions from the atmosphere, so such as tree planting is quite a popular one, or prevents activities that would have caused emissions in the first place. So, for example, supporting a community to transition away from coal or gas with a renewables project.
So we have listeners from across the globe tuning into the ISO show, which is absolutely amazing. I think on the last count of 35 different countries. So that's just awesome. And I know that there'll be different offsetting schemes in different countries. But let's say we've got listeners who are UK based, which is obviously where we're based. Where do we stand in the UK if you're looking at offsetting, and going down the PAS 2060 route.
So you are quite limited what you can do in the UK. I mean, in some ways you can't do anything, but PAS 2060 does allow for the purchase of carbon credits directly from the Woodland Carbon Code, which is a verified scheme, but you just need to pay really close attention to which type of credit you're buying. Some offer what they refer to, what the standard refers to as pending issuance units, which is essentially a promise to plant the tree. So you're basically buying a hypothetical tree that doesn't exist yet, hence why you can't use this to claim neutrality. But if you buy, an actual tree that's, recorded under the Woodland Carbon Code from the correct provider, you can use this to claim carbon neutrality in line with PAS 2060. Providing it's, a real tree that does exist and is taking carbon out of the air. So yeah, just to summarise, the Woodland Carbon Code is permissible within the standard, but you are quite limited, to be honest, what you can do with UK schemes. Hence why most people tend to look abroad, because there's more independently verified schemes abroad.
So, just to be clear, we're not making any recommendations on any offsetting schemes, and that's not part of the Carbonology journey in terms of we don't do that for our clients do. It's entirely up to them, but we can just provide some insights into what the credible schemes are at that time. And bear in mind that this is being recorded at the end of February 2022, and obviously this is a rapidly changing landscape, so it's definitely worthwhile checking out which are the recognised and credible schemes. And again, it's not us saying which ones they are. It will be down to the verification body that do the verification against PAS 2060. And again, that's something that we check out with the certification body that's going to be doing that on our client's behalf. But if you're doing this independently, we strongly recommend that you do that so that you don't go down the route of offsetting with an unrecognised scheme in the eyes of that verification body. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that as a bit of a disclaimer. And again, it's definitely down to the organisation. You make that decision if you do go down the offsetting route, but just doing your due diligence to make sure that they are credible schemes that you're investing in. So I think with some other clients that we've had, David, I think the United Nations offsetting scheme, which obviously is an international one, but that was one that was recognised as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, the UN's got some great projects on there. Another common one that I point people towards is the gold standard. So that's a great website to look at. Again, the projects come and go very quickly, but you can get an idea of the projects on there and the type of things you'll be contributing to. UN's a great provider as well.
Yeah, okay, great. So just to reiterate, the key message here is do due diligence before investing in any offsetting schemes. And just to be clear, those offsets, that you do purchase, they're not forever, are they? You can't, say that we're carbon neutral forever. It is only for a defined period, isn't it? So can you just kind of expand on that, David, and explain how it actually works?
Yes, so offsets are retired after a year. So it's a requirement of the standard is basically, retired, expired, they only last for a year. Hence why they're generally purchased on an annual basis, and the reporting period is also aligned with that being an annual basis. But there are a few key considerations you'll need to be aware of before making a purchase, which, to be honest, I'm sure we could probably make an hour-long episode. But perhaps the most important one, that offsets must be verified by an independent third party. This ensures two main things. First, the project actually exists somewhere in the world, and is a real project. And the other part of that being, that the project is doing what it says it will be doing. As a colleague of mine used to say, when it comes to offsets, it's very much buyer beware when you're looking at them. Something, like we just mentioned it a moment ago, some examples I tend to direct people towards are the UN or the gold standard. And then the project themselves need to meet a set of criteria as well as the actual provider. So I'll avoid going into too much of the technical details there in this episode, but they need to ensure they represent genuine reductions that wouldn't have occurred otherwise. They need to represent permanent reductions, just to ensure that they need to represent permanent reductions, that aren't just removed really quickly or as soon as, you've bought the project. They need to ensure that the project in one location doesn't lead to an increase in emissions elsewhere, so there's no point, one project removing emissions from the atmosphere if, somewhere down the road it's leading to an increase. And again, this could probably be an episode on its own, but for those of you who would like more detail, I suggest looking at the, the formal definitions in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol of additionality, permanence, leakage, and double counting, because it goes into a bit more detail there. But, like I said, they need to be independently third-party verified, and they need to represent genuine reductions. And just a note on the double counting, and going back to, the retirement of the offsets, the whole point of retirement is so someone else can't buy the same thing as you. So they're essentially not double purchased.
Yeah. It is an area that's really open to interpretation, isn't it? And I think that, spending the time to select the right offsetting provider is really important, because at the end of the day, it's about your image as well as an organisation, and you don't want to put your good reputation at risk by going with some dodgy offsetting provider. I'm not saying that they're all dodgy by any means whatsoever. The majority of schemes that obviously that we know that clients are working with are very credible. So great. So I think that there's a lot of organisations now that are claiming that they're carbon neutral. But obviously the difference here with PAS 2060 is that there is a proven methodology. We've got a proven specification on what constitutes good practice as far as carbon neutrality is concerned, because at the end of the day, this is an international standard. It's been created by technical experts across various industries to identify what best practice actually is when it comes to carbon neutrality. So that can be a big difference. It can give you a competitive edge if you are looking at becoming carbon neutral. And, it could potentially be the difference between doing it the right way and the wrong way. So all we're saying is that this is a proven standard that's been recognised and approved, and that certification bodies across the UK and internationally are actually offering verification services. So that's independent verification of what you say that you are doing. So if you are saying that you are carbon neutral, they are doing that independent verification. Okay, so it's not just you saying that you're carbon neutral, it's a verification against a recognised international standard and verified by an independent third party as well. So David, how would you describe your role as a carbonologist in this offsetting part then? What kind of part do you play, if you want to share that with our listeners?
Yes, so the thing that would keep me up at night is a client running off and finding a random website and spending their hard-earned money on a dodgy offset provider, or one that doesn't meet the requirements. So basically my role as a carbonologist is to essentially let my clients know which schemes appear to meet the requirements of PAS 2060 and which ones don't. In that case, it can be very black and white, yes or no. Just a disclaimer, there's going to be loads of great schemes out there that are actually, delivering benefits for people and the planet and, ultimately leading to a positive impact. But if they don't meet the requirements of the standard, I will advise avoiding them, because that is my job, essentially. But of course, the actual main come out of this on a more sort of positive side, and, the happy side is that you can finally make that declaration of achievement of carbon neutrality in line with PAS 2060 once you've purchased the offsets and got your certificates from them.
Yeah, which then leads us into the next and the final episode in this series, number 7, which is all about the declaration. So thank you very much for sharing insights into offsetting with us, David. I know that we've only really skimmed the surface on this particular subject, which I know is a hot topic for a lot of people right now, but hopefully it's just provided you with some guidance on how offsetting works in relation to PAS 2060 and the importance of selecting the right offsetting partner to work with. Great. So look forward to catching up with you, David, on the next and final episode on the declaration. So that's all about where you actually make your formal declaration of carbon neutrality. I wouldn't say end the journey, but really it's kind of past the beginning, isn't it? Because you've completed this cycle of the 7 steps to get to the declaration stage, but you literally can't take your foot off the gas there. It is all about continual improvement and ongoing reductions, which we can come on to. But I know in the declaration podcast that we cover, I was going to talk about celebrating your success and making sure that you amplify your communications to create that positive vibe about your carbon neutrality. So look forward to catching up with you again then, David.
Yeah, can't wait. Thanks for having me on again.
You're welcome. Oh, and just a reminder that if any of our listeners would like to book in a free consultation with David, then please do go to the ISO show notes, where you'll be able to get a link to David's calendar and you'll be able to book a slot in his diary. But just to warn you, he's very busy, so apologies if you can't get to see him straight away. But that's something that we're offering our ISO show listeners. So if you'd like to pick David's brains and find out more about Carbonology and how you might want to work with David possibly as well, then that's an opportunity that you don't want to miss out on. And finally, David also created a Getting Started with Carbon Neutrality checklist. So that's another thing that's worthwhile getting access to. So again, you can get access to that via the ISO show notes in the link that we'll be providing. Okay, thanks very much for listening once again. I really do appreciate you joining us and to hopefully help you along your journey to become carbon neutral. And I look forward to catching up with you on the next and final episode in the series on how to become carbon neutral.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.